Lesson 3. Would Noah really have been able to save animals from extinction by rescuing a pair of each species from the flood? In theory, that seems possible. Each couple routinely produces more offspring than are needed to replace the father and mother in the population. A pair of cats easily produces 10 kittens a year for a decade, or 50 times what is necessary to replace themselves in the population. The only thing that prevents a species from multiplying enough to cover the face of the earth is competition for limited resources. With only so much food to go around, one offspring per individual, 2 per couple, survives on the average. In a world emptied of competition by the flood, each pair of animals should have been able to repopulate its species by doing what comes naturally, that is, by overproducing. But modern rescuers, zoos and wildlife groups who work to save endangered species have not had an easy time. Disasters that kill off many individuals, squeezing the population through a time of lower numbers, are called bottlenecks. Passenger pigeons, kin of the dove that brought back to Noah an olive branch of good tidings, were once the most numerous of all birds, with a population of 5 billion. They were forced into a bottleneck when hunters' greediness drastically reduced their flocks in the 19th century. Even though pairs survived in the wild and in zoos, passenger pigeons proved unable to breed unless crowded in large flocks. The last individual died in 1900. The species is extinct. Pandas went through a bottleneck only a few years ago when the arrow bamboo on which they feed all bloomed, went to seed, and died. Arrow bamboo plants all do that in unison every 100 years. And apparently, pandas have in the past recovered from these once-in-a-century famines. But in the last century, the spread of farmlands cut off groups of pandas from one another, lessening the choice of mate among survivors. One more time. But in the last century, the spread of farmlands cut off groups of pandas from one another, lessening the choice of mates among survivors. As zookeepers have discovered, pandas are choosy about partners, reluctant to mate with strangers, and fertile for only a few days once a year. Pandas remain endangered in spite of a worldwide effort at matchmaking. Cheetahs met a bottleneck of an unknown kind perhaps a few thousand years ago. Whatever that disaster was, it seems to have left alive only closely related individuals. Inbreeding among these kin resulted in various defects. Most of the male's sperm are incapable of fertilizing eggs. Most of the female's babies die. Cheetahs are becoming extinct because their genes lack variety. That would have been the fate of any pair rescued by Noah, since the next generation after the flood would have been siblings, and the only possible matings would have been between the saved couple, or between the father and his daughters, or the mother and her sons, or between sisters and brothers. Noah, as his modern heirs are discovering, would have had to have understood the fine points of reproduction to save species, for extinction is less a matter of dying than of breeding.